Good afternoon, everyone. Here I am to read Chapter 4 of A Jar of Dreams. Make sure you have your reading spiral and you are open to page 31. Just press pause anytime you need to and restart it when you're ready. Mrs. Sugar usually leaves her back door unlatched, so I just knocked and walked right in. I found her standing at the kitchen sink washing her supper dishes and talking to her pet canary, Lydia. Mrs. Sugar is a very large person and has the nicest soft lap to sit in. I discovered that when I was a lot younger and used to need comforting on the days when I came home and found Mama out at work. Mrs. Sugar's face looks like a scrubbed red apple because she spends a lot of time in the sun working on her garden. And she has short brown hair that's held back with two curved amber combs. "Guess what, Mrs. Sugar?" I said the minute I walked into her kitchen. "Mama's starting a home laundry." "She's what?" she asked. Now this is the bottom of the page, so you should pause and write down a few things before you start the video again. I said hello to her canary, Lydia, and then I told her again about the laundry. I also remembered there was more news, and I told her Aunt Waka was coming to visit us from Japan. Mrs. Sugar seemed to like the second news best. "Glory be, your mama must be happy," she said, and she took her soapy hands out of the dishwater, and gave me a damp kiss on the cheek. "But a home laundry," she said. "That sounds like a lot of work for your mama. Doesn't she have enough to do?" Mrs. Sugar wiped her hands on her apron and just let the rest of her dishes in the sink as though they would finish washing themselves. Then she took me to the dining room, told me to sit at her round table with its lacy cloth, and opened her cupboard to see what she had to give me. She found a tin of English tea biscuits and put some on a plate for me. "Papa's going to see if he can't find an old washing machine to fix up for Mama," I said. I also told her I was going to help with the ironing. Mrs. Sugar was just about to bite into a tea biscuit when she suddenly stopped, like a toy that's become unwound. "Well, Rinko," she said, looking enormously pleased with herself, "you just tell your papa his search has ended. I have an old broken down washing machine sitting right in my basement." Okay, end of the page. Got to push pause. Got to write a few things down that we learned on that page. And then press play again when you're ready. She said she'd been waiting for Mr. Sugarman to fix it for her one day, but he died of pneumonia before he ever got around to it. I think Mr. Sugarman was a nice person, although I don't remember him very well. I know he was a mailman, and the reason he got pneumonia and died was because he kept on delivering the mail in the cold rain one winter when he was sick and should have stayed home in bed. "Papa could have fixed your washing machine for you," I told her, but Mrs. Sugar said she was so used to washing everything by hand, she'd even forgotten she had a washing machine. "After all," she said, "how much laundry is there for just one person? Your mama is welcome to it." Mrs. Sugar put her biscuit down on the table and insisted we go down that very minute to her basement and look at the machine. I followed her to a dark, musty corner, and sure enough, there was an old washing machine with a wringer on it. It was half tipped over, like it was drunk, and it looked as though rust had crept into all its joints. I wasn't sure if even Papa could get it to go again. But Mrs. Sugar said, "You know your papa can fix anything. You tell him and your brother Cal to come and get it anytime they want." So that's the bottom of the page again, bottom of page 33. You want to press pause, take a few notes, and then rejoin when you're ready. So the very next day, Papa and Cal went over and brought the washing machine back to our basement. Mama and Joji and I watched while they propped it up with a box and set it by the laundry tubs. I could tell Mama thought the same thing I did when I first saw it. "Do you think you can get it to work?" she asked. Papa checked the machine carefully and finally said he thought he could. It needs a leg, some new hoses, a handle for the wringer, and a few other things. But just give me a few days," he said. "I think I can bring it back to life." "So are we in business then?" Joji asked. "I guess we are," Mama said. And that's how we got started with our A1 home laundry. We all pitched in with cleaning up the basement, which was almost as moldy and cluttered as Mrs. Sugar's. Papa built a counter for sorting and separating the laundry into colored and white, starch and no starch, and marking everything with indelible ink. He also built a chute by the window so he could just throw the laundry bundles down from his car and they would land in a big basket right near the wash tubs. So that's the end of 34. Now, as you can tell, when I say the end, there is more writing, but it's a new paragraph. And I think it's better if we stop before the new paragraph to pause and take some notes. Okay, continuing, 34. Cal rigged up some new clotheslines out in the backyard and also strung up some rope in the basement for days when the wash wouldn't be hung outdoors. Our basement looks like some giant spider had gone crazy and spun webs of rope all over the basement beams. Cal was so tall, he had to duck to keep from hanging himself on the ropes because he'd put them up at the right height for Mama and me to reach. One afternoon, when Mama and I were down in the basement trying to get rid of some empty cartons and old newspapers, Mama came across the big trunk that she had brought with her from Japan. I'd never seen her open it up, so I asked if there was anything inside. "Oh, yes," Mama said, "my Japanese self." I didn't know what Mama meant until she blew off the dust on top and lifted the heavy lid of the trunk. The top tray was full of old photograph albums and bundles of letters and Japanese books and notebooks that Mama had used in school. Mama said she had brought everything in the world she had owned when she came to America to marry Papa. She showed me her school notebooks filled with feathery writing and faded dust-colored ink, and she showed me lots of photographs. One was of her family. There were Grandpa and Grandma looking younger than I had ever seen them, my two uncles wearing school uniforms, and Mama and Aunt Waka when they were 12 and 13. Aunt Waka was standing with a crutch, and Mama told me she had had to use a crutch for a long time because she was born with a deformed foot. But Aunt Waka didn't look sad about it. In fact, she was the only one in the photo who was smiling. Everybody else looked so solemn, they almost seemed sad. That's the end of 35. So push pause, take some notes, restart when you're ready. But Mama said picture taking was serious business in those days. Mama showed me some more photographs, and there was one with rows of young Japanese girls standing in kimonos, their hair piled up on their heads in enormous pompadours. They looked solemn too, and each one was clutching a rolled-up diploma. Mama told me that was her graduation picture from girls' school and asked if I could pick her out. I didn't think I could, but finally, in the very last row, I saw this skinny girl with Mama's eyes. "Is that you, Mama?" I couldn't believe it when Mama said I had found her. She squinted at the old photograph and began to smile. "Do you know I wanted to become a school teacher then?" she asked. I was surprised. I had never before imagined Mama wanting to be anything else than exactly what she was now. It never occurred to me she might have had another kind of dream for herself. "But if you'd become a teacher," I said, "you might not have come to America to marry Papa." That's right, she answered. So you see, it all worked out for the best, didn't it? Mama got very quiet then, and she put everything back in the tray, giving each album a little pat as she put it down. Then she closed the lid and gave that a few pats too, as though she was saying goodbye to everything inside. That's the end of 36. Press pause, write some notes. What's in the rest of the trunk? I really wanted to see more. Oh, just my silk kimonos and brocade obies and things I don't need anymore, Mama said, and she brushed the dust from her hands and went back upstairs to start supper. I stayed in the basement for a while, though, because I had a lot of thoughts muddling around in my head. I felt as if Mama wasn't just plain Mama anymore. It was as if a part of her was locked up in her big trunk, never able to get out. It gave me an odd, unsettled feeling, like having a pebble in my shoe. I got to wondering if maybe the reason Mama wanted so much for me to be a teacher was because she didn't get to be one herself. I thought about the smiling girl with the crutch in the photograph, and then I began to feel this terrific curiosity to see what my Aunt Waka would be like. I also wondered if she still had a deformed foot. Suddenly, I wanted her to hurry up and come, and I ran upstairs to clean out some of the junk in my closet, as though getting ready for her would make her come here sooner. And that's the end of chapter 4, so make sure that you pause and take some notes on page 37, and then go back and listen to each part as many times as you need to so that you can get some good notes for each page. All right, I'll see you in the morning.